We are live. Dave, thank you for joining me today. It's great. People don't know this, but we talk a lot off air. We text and we find out, and we're one of the very few, and I'll say few, some of the very few people in the UK, handful of people that are trying to save our armed forces. But for some reason, we're struggling to get anything. But something happened the other day in the media. Basically, to the people watching, basically a while ago, I got asked a question by Alex, who's a floor manager at GB News. He phoned me up and he says, "Hi, Trev. I was wondering if we can get you on today at 3 p.m. to talk about Germany and France and what's happened with their armed forces." And I went, "This is great." And I went, "Yes, of course." I hung up, spoke to you, Dave. We've got a chance here to get across what we believe is happening. Yeah. And you were like, yep. I had all these notes from you. It was going really well. And then the live chat happened at GB News. And it threw me because they had Lieutenant General Jonathan Riley and they had him there. And he's the expert in NATO, EU. So I was thinking, why do they want me on then if he's there? But then they flipped it to talk about
conscription.
Yes. National service, Trevor, what do you think? And I'm like, well, we don't want to talk about national service. Why is this word coming up? Because of this. And I tried to flip it. But since that chat we had, there's been a few things happen now, which has been leading up to this point, which is when we spoke the other day again about basically the British Army, which includes the Army, Navy and Air Force. So the British Armed Forces are being undermined, they are being disbanded, and this is actually happening by our politicians. So our politicians are doing this. Our defense minister is doing this while giving away our armed forces, our weaponry to other country, Ukraine. But at the same time, he's then saying we haven't got enough manpower. We haven't got enough of this. We haven't got enough. But we would have had you not giving it away. And that's where you come in, because you know a bit more in depth about that, don't you?
Yeah, it's not coherent, is it? I think, yeah, by the way, look, great scoop there on GB News with General Riley. You couldn't have got a better guy. and the way that you really went into the more substantive problems beyond the conscription, there's a lot of chatter and traffic across Europe about this now. And that's just because of the crisis in Ukraine. But it's kind of double-edged because, yes, our military is weak, but it's not weak by chance. It's been weakened. So we've got this whole problem, reaction, solution thing all of a sudden. Well, if you wanted to be objective, and I've discussed this with Riley and his cohorts, the disarmament happened from 1981 onwards, 9 years before the end of the Berlin Wall coming down and the so-called Cold War finishing, which of course it didn't. But the point is, of course, is why were we disarming? Why were we taking away military capability and at the same time reducing our industrial capability? So there has been a lot happen since that. And it kind of dovetails back to Blair in a lot of ways, because if you remember, about a fortnight ago, we had this dodgy meeting at Ditchley, which is the government think tank conference centre, and we've got David Lammy, John Healey, the Deputy Secretary of NATO, a guy called Angus Lapsley, who's a former MOD top civil servant, Director General, on loan from the civil service. And he was quite famous because he was reported for this document dump of secret paperwork at the bus stop in Kent. But he's now, quite high up in NATO. There was a lot of other defence people there. Gisela Stewart, and then David Liddington, who's chair of RUSI, so we don't get more of a defence interest than that. And of course, he's ultra EU, ultra Remain. My point to everyone at the time was, well, you don't have a meeting like that and have somebody as high up in a civil service capacity now in NATO and not talk defence when you've got the shadow defence secretary there. So they then went immediately from Ditchley to the Munich Defence Conference And Lammy and Healey have announced they want to go into a security pact with the EU if they get elected.
Yeah. So
security pact, Trevor, does that leap off the page to you? What are they actually talking about?
Well, because I look at different things, Dave. I'm very fortunate that I've got yourself and a few other high-ranking people in the armed forces that I can actually go and ask questions and get honest answers from. And as long as I don't mention their names, I'm happy. You know who they are anyway. But the one thing that sat back with me was, and what you said about the meeting in Munich is very important, because this to me feels like a shadow Ministry of Defence doing things and finding things out, and then the MOD saying it's got nothing to do with us, but the information is being passed up. The one thing which I find strange is, it was only last week when I said that the Chief of Defence, General Sir Patrick Saunders, was threatening to quit. Yeah. He was threatening to walk away because they wouldn't increase the defence budget.
Now, I've had that from 2 former heads of the army this week.
Yeah. So he's threatening to quit. It's in the papers. He's threatening to quit if they won't increase the defence budget. Then all of a sudden, the MOD says we are going to increase the defence budget by $3 billion. And he's like, okay, $3 billion. However, you know as well that then the Treasury then stepped out and said, you're not getting it from us. We're not giving you any money, because we believe that you keep wasting the money we give you. Now, I sat back and thought about that sentence. You keep wasting the money we give you. So the civil servants at the Treasury are giving the civil servants at the MOD money, but the civil servants are blaming the MOD and wasting it, but it's the civil servants that are wasting it. And the whole idea behind this was, because I remember, do you remember a while ago when MP from Berwick and Tweed, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, she was actually the MP for MOD procurement. They got rid of her, and she was fantastic. But basically, our government and MOD and civil servants do not want to invest money in British companies for our own procurement, because we would rather give our money, the $3 billion, across to the EU so we can work from the same company, so we all wear the same uniform and it's cheaper.
Well, so I mean, just to sort of conclude on the defence pact that Lammy and Healey have announced. So this is a proper announcement. Yeah, there's no ifs, no buts. Labour, you vote Labour, they will go into this, what they're referring to as a defence pact. Now that, I would say at the very least, is completely disingenuous, if not actually sort of going more towards being quite deceptive and cleverly wordsmith, which is the problem we had under Theresa May with the way she was wordsmithing anything to do with European security and European Defence Union. So that's the big elephant in the room. So the EU are not offering anyone nationally in Europe a pact. They're only offering military unification and the defence unification, which will end up in defence union. They're not offering a pact. Nobody in the EU, Ursula von der Leyen or any of them, are using that term of reference. They're just talking about defence union, i.e. we want to unify all of the military and all the defence industry in Europe. That's it, full stop. We're not adding anything. We're just going to bring it together and we're going to control it. So it's not an additional anything. It's only what's already there militarily in Europe to begin with. So Borrell then immediately announces we're going to go for this common European. So he's the one of the ministers there at the EU that covers this portfolio, Joseph Borrell, and he's saying we're going to go for this common procurement. So all in the same week, we've got all this traffic our end with our own military officers and Ben Wallace saying we need more money and that there's a problem. Our military is broken. Well, it's been broken. It's been run down deliberately. That wasn't by chance. They took conscious decisions to do that where they wanted. And Riley won't mind me mentioning this because he's done it publicly. They've taken the British Army out of the war fighting game. That's it. Even this is very much along the lines of what Tim Cross was saying on GB News in the week. But of course, what we need to get into in order to really get the lid off this is start talking about just exactly where they're going to take this into, effectively, which is if they're going to say we need to procure all this equipment. Well, hang on, you can see the picture's going to be, well, wouldn't it be brilliant if we went in with the EU and we did it with them because it'll be cheaper?
Yeah.
A great deal. It'll be great. It'll be brilliant. It'll be jam tomorrow. We'll have all this stuff. It'll be fantastic. All right, what a great idea, what a great concept. I've spoke to a lot of officers that think initially this plan is a good concept, but then when you get into the detail and they get a proper briefing about the nuts and bolts of it, not what the Blairite civil servants have pitched them, omitting the juicy bit, they all go, whoa, hold on, that won't work. That's a really bad idea. When you get to the proper nitty gritty, which is the EU will control capital, procurement, budget and policy, both industrially and militarily.
So those that are in the know understand what's going on. Quite a lot of deceitful and deceptive behavior in order to fit an agenda set out by the Blairites and stuff. But the one thing, if I was a skeptic and I'm sitting back and I'm going, okay, Dave, okay, so this is happening. So what is in it for our politicians? Why are they so hell bent on this? What do they get from this?
Well, we've got a, I was talking to a very senior officer yesterday on this, and then subsequently a former defence advisor who was calling this out, for quite some time about the way. And if you remember your conversation with Riley about, he stated that the MOD had been disemboweled by the civil servants, right?
Yeah.
These were all Blairite settings. We don't need any of this if we're going to go into EDU Defence Union. We don't need any of this stuff. We don't need a functioning MOD. We don't need a functioning command and control centre. Because if we're going to do it with the EU, all that will be in Brussels. So you don't need any of that. So there's the reason for it. So the problem we've got is a woeful parliament where the knowledge and understanding in defence and security is the worst it's ever been. We've got a Tory party at the handover in 2010 made a decision with their defence grandees to keep defence and security apolitical, and the baton for EU Defence Union, so the Europeanisation of our military, was handed over from Blair, who initiated it, to the Tories. They agreed to carry on, keep it apolitical. So obviously, with it being apolitical, a non-political issue, the MPs don't look at it, investigate it. So we've got a compounded problem, and of course, all of this room while all this has been going on. So we've been disarming. Yeah, nationally, from a national point of view, disarming. Our industry is very weak. And as one Air Chief Marshal said to me the other day, well, what do we make anymore? Well, this is a real serious problem, because even if they want to now say to a company, we want that, and that, we need it literally like de Havilland making a mosquito in World War II. We want it next week, right? Because there's a real problem. It couldn't be delivered. But that industrial atrophy is as a result of the policy that we've had since 1981. All right. Now, if you look back, Admiral Henry Leach called it out. You were absolutely bang on with the way you articulated it. Against the ministers sort of coming in and, and effectively defrocking our military. So just in terms of the solution. Okay, so we've got problem, reaction, solution. Okay, so they're identifying the problem, it's weak, it's broken. Okay, reaction. The solution is going to be what?
We need something new, fresh. Now, people always say this has been signed off, it can't go back. Well, no, I'm a firm believer. Listen, this is our country. We can rip up whatever people have signed in the past and we can start fresh. That's what we can do. Whether it upsets people or not, we can do it. So the way I look at this is this. We know that the Conservative government have screwed us over. But we also know that the Labour government will screw us over as well. So
it's worse. So it's Trevor, absolutely. It's not a question of good and bad. It's a question of bad and badder. And as you and I well know, we only have a minority now of Tory MPs prepared to buck, argue, look at, investigate anything EU related. But the big problem is that they've not gone into the defence scene here with the EU enough for it to make, those sort of 82, or no, I know at the vote it was about 100 and odd that were MPs that will leave. And there's 82 that are firm, sort of what was referred to as the Spartans. And it's less than that now because they keep getting picked off. But that's what we're working with. We've only got a small opportunity of an argument on this with those MPs, but their own party is locking them out of it because they handed over from Blair in 2010 and they're compromised. They're effectively snookered themselves politically with that manoeuvre.
what's the alternative then? In my head now, I think of, well, as I spoke to you earlier, but I've got the leader of Reform coming on to have a live chat with me here on Sunday night at 7.
Brilliant.
And I'm not going to ambush him. I'm not going to try and just boom. I want to have a chat with him and give him a few, how are you going to achieve this, achieve that? Is there a possibility by next year that, say, because now I want to point this out, there's still some Labour MPs that do believe in what we're talking about. So is there a possibility of maybe Reform bringing in MPs from Conservative and Labour to bolster them up, to move them forward? Is that an alternative? Do you see something like that?
I mean, some of Lord Tebbit put it to me numerous times. The only way we're going to deal with this, it needs to be on an all parliamentary basis, APPG, all parliamentary group. Right. So, but we've struggled with that because it's just been nobbled and nobbled and nobbled. You know, the settings within the Cabinet Office and the government, don't really want to be getting the lid off European Defence Union, because clearly a lot of the Director Generals there in the civil service want to go into it. It's as simple as that. You know, Lapsley and all the rest of them, and our friend Lovegrove, when we were talking about him, the former MOD Permanent Secretary, and he then became the National Security Advisor. So just to sort of frame the situation so people can see this. So just how important it is. So Ursula von der Leyen was the former German defense minister, heavily criticised for winding down Germany's military and it being in a woeful state. Okay, that's well reported. Right, we had Trump and the Bolton administration calling them out for not supporting NATO properly, and what on earth are you doing? And at the same time, we have the same problems in France, where France, their own general over there, if you remember, not many years ago, was threatening to resign to Macron, stop cutting our military, right? This is exactly what the UK has been doing. It's the same dynamic against officer advice. So Ursula von der Leyen went from being German defence minister to being head of the EU. Now, that's not by chance, is it? Was there not something put in stone, though, Dave? Well, she was the only candidate. So, that's not random, is it? That's a thing, yeah. But was Germany now? Yes, she went from being defence Germany to now head of the EU. Yeah. But she's now pushing for a German-led EU military mobilisation. Yeah. Now, surely, was it not set in stone that Germany should never, ever, ever be allowed to have a military with so many force? Because I don't care who's watching, it's German, they can't be trusted. They have never been trusted. Twice they have carried out genocide, and twice they've destroyed things. And right now, what they are doing, because Germany has led this with Ursula, they have flooded Europe. They have flooded Europe with people that are from outside Europe. And what we're having now in every streets, all over Europe, we're having rape, pillage, murder, we're suicide. I mean, we are under some sort of lunatics that is destroying all the countries. The open border policy is destroyed Europe. Really shocking. And I think, if you wanted to sort of summarize, I mean, I did this the other day with somebody else. If you think EU, look what they've done to agriculture. It's on its knees. Our farmers are absolutely at their wits' end. Look what they've done to our fishing. It's on its knees. They're at their wits' end. Look what it did to our coal and steel. Right? There's nothing this organisation gets, anything it has to do with it, it absolutely smashes it on a national basis because it wants to be the thing. Now think military. Right? Don't think they won't do it, because they will if somebody doesn't put up a proper fight. Now, I think that the most important thing that we could probably note in real time that's just happened in terms of big news. So there was a Foreign and Security Committee at Parliament 2 days ago. And Sir Richard Dearlove, former head of MI6, was there as an expert witness. And Lord Peter Ricketts. Now, Lord Peter Ricketts was the first National Security Advisor. He's really pro-EU and he's really pro-European Defence Union. Although he won't use the magic words, he'll dance around it like a lot of them do with integration, co-op, partnership. It'll be brilliant. It's great. But of course, none of those words apply. We're talking about unification, unify to end up with union. It's single point. That's the whole point of the concept. It's nothing like NATO. NATO collection of sovereign states. So Dearlove at this committee absolutely nails this, calls it out straight away. Literally, you can put a video on your Twitter feed. I'll ping it over to you, where he literally says, "Look, hang on a minute. If Britain commits any kind of investment in this, and any kind of places any substantive amounts of assetry at Brussels in this EU defence union, it will be a total disaster." And he cited this recent sliding that we saw last year, Trevor, with PESCO. And what he did was brilliant, because he said to everyone, well, look, if you actually read the documentation, which most people have not done, you'll find this thing's like a spider's web. You touch one part of it, you're in all of it. And this is what he pointed out. No, hang on a minute. We've gone into PESCO. Why have we done that? That's not a good idea, because if you go into, they're saying, oh, it's only because we're going to go into this bit of military mobility. No, it doesn't work like that. The small print, as he points out, you're in all of it. And he then goes on to say, well, okay, we're in all of that now. And look who they've put in charge of security. Greece. So big shout out to Richard Dearlove. Absolutely bang on all of it, really. And then, of course, we've got Ricketts, 180 degrees opposed from him, going, oh, no, it's brilliant. It's lovely. It's great. It's fantastic. So we've got those two, literally, hang on a minute. If we've got professional people at a committee, all right, you think there'd be an overlap, a consensus of opinion, professional opinion. We've got the two really seriously top people there. And, of course, as head of MI6, there's nothing he doesn't get to see. He gets to see all of it. 180 degrees opposed in opinion on this thing. So, like, alarm bells, everyone. There's a real serious problem here with this.
Is our MI5, MI6, is our Secret Intelligence Service au fait with this, or are they against?
I think it's going to be very difficult to get opinions on that. It's a conversation I'd love to have with anybody in that. Most of the conversations I have are with military officers. And then some political figures, and then some press, never really, I don't know. I mean, of course, well, you don't know, do you? You may have been speaking to somebody that was SIS and not knowing it, because it's the nature of the job, isn't it?
Generals have fingers and pies.
There's a bit of an overlap there. They tend to be sort of close, don't they? They'll be like that with it. But I think Dearlove there really highlighted this absolutely superbly at that committee, because it's very timely with what's happened with Healy and Lammy at Munich.
Well, you're
but if you've not telling anybody which way to vote. I've always viewed it as bad and badder. But the only argument we've got really is with a small minority of MPs who are being locked out of this. We have to take it political. This has to become a political issue. Now, of course, Letwin, when he took over from the Blair Brown regime in 2010, he'd sort of set the Tory party on a terrible pathway of there's no votes in defence. We're just not going to discuss it. And I was reliably informed by somebody who was at that handover meeting as top professional government civil servant, which was, we're not going to talk about defence because we're not going to tell anybody what we're doing because nobody will vote for it.
What's the point of that, David?
Now.
This is what now I look at this from a military point of view, but then I look at it from a naive point of view. And if I look at this from an ordinary member of the public, a naive point of view, my question is, what are our politicians gaining from this? What are they going to gain from hiding this? Why do these people live off social media? They live off I'm a celebrity. They love their book deals. This is MPs, by the way. They love their book deals. They love their 5 minutes on Jeremy Vine and Jeremy whatever. They love TV. They love power. So why are they so happy to hand it across to the EU?
Well, the caveat to that, Trevor, is really it's sort of all this has been done in silence. It's in terms of the chronology, from the outset. So the paperwork, I understand, come from John Major. It was then handed over to the Blair government. Blair actually activated the European Defence Union and initiated it in 2000. And it was all hidden in plain view. It was not discussed. There was no vote. There was no parliamentary scrutiny for it. Obviously things are being done in all the machinery in government behind all that, where it's being Europeanized. But the parties never really discussed it. It wasn't an election issue. Nobody got asked to vote on it one way or the other anywhere. And that happened all from 2000 onwards, at the handover to the Tory coalition in 2010. Obviously, there was a handover there where they were like, well, what are we going to do with this? And their strategy was, I'm reliably informed from an inside parliamentary staffer source, quite happy to rely on what he's saying, but this is what was put to me, which was they had a bit of a meeting and they said, well, what are we going to do with this? It's a bit difficult. We'd already got this Letwin idea that he would keep defence apolitical, don't tell anybody what we're doing because nobody will vote for it. And they decided that they would go along with the European Defence Union because of the defence contracts. And if things got politically awkward, that they would use the veto. So the strategy is absolutely woeful because they didn't understand really what the single point defence common procurement entailed, which was that the EU would call all of the contract shots, literally, and would standardise the guns. So at the best, Britain may only see subcontracting of componentry, never to be able to make it an absolute system in its own right as the contractor.
So we need...
So that brings us back to this common procurement gambit that Borrell has just pitched.
I've looked at procurement and I always try and get my figures right, but I looked at it today and I remember mentioning this. I used to think there was more people that worked at the MOD than there actually was. Today I was able to do a bit of research and find out that there's over 60,000 civilian employees that work under the Ministry of Defence. That's nearly more than the British Army. We've got more civilians working in the MOD than nearly we have in the whole of the British Armed Forces, which I find quite strange.
Yeah, right. Indeed.
When I looked at this, ready? Top level budgetary. So people that work with the budgetary, top level budgetary personnel at the MOD, they employ 36,340 people who just work on the budgets. Where I don't understand that. And there's over 7,600 that work in trading fund and executives. There's 3,710 people are locally engaged civilians. There's over 10,500 that just work with DSE and training. Wow, you know what I mean? There's more people working in the MOD, DSE and training than there is in military training establishments in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, I mean, you're a bit like a kind of one-to-one there. You know, frontline troop to some kind of quasi management. It's a bit one-to-one, isn't it? What the? You know,
crazy. Money's wasted.
Yeah, years ago, well, the Israelis don't have a model like this. I think they have a ratio of there's about 500 people in the office, and the rest of them are all out there actually, you know. Just hang on a minute. Why do we need all that? What are they doing?
Well, my parents said, and they've always said this, but Jonathan Riley said a few days ago that we need to get rid of civilian staff controlling our military, and we need to bring back the War Office, where we have people with knowledge, experience, and the ranks and the structure who know how to fix the country. Because if we keep relying on these people leaving university to take these roles, all they've read is a textbook. They have no knowledge and experience.
There's a dreadful couple of data points with this. I mean, he's absolutely correct. You know, he's absolutely dead on. You know, the officers were defrocked in effect from their authority as any kind of, you know, the heads of service or the chief of defence staff. That's a process that's happened, you know, pretty much scissoring over the Blair period. But of course, it's worse than that, because without that knowledge and experience and expertise, you're wide open, aren't you? And this is one of the things, I'm just going to call this out because this was a sitter in the Brexit period. All right. Riley and his group of officers were offering to the ERG to come in and sort the defence, you know, what was at this time, as Theresa May had it, we were going into defence union in a subsection of the backstop. No ifs, no buts. And a lot of those Tory MPs who were on the Leave side somehow managed to get nobbled, I don't know, by the whips. I don't know what the mechanism was, but the pushback was to those officers, bearing in mind, they're the ones that have got the expertise and the experience, right? We're not working with them because they're too old. Well, what the hell has the age got to do with it? You know, the age is irrelevant. They could be whatever age. It's about the knowledge and understanding. and they refuse to work with them. So you're very much in this same sort of period now of, well, hang on. And as you've seen with all the things that you've been involved with, you know, that you think, hang on a minute, you know, I could lock myself in the room and talk to the wall as get as much sense out of the you know, the people that are in the admin side of it now currently. You know, I mean, they're not bothered about this, they're bothered about other stuff. But lots of the senior, more, you know, really top senior guys were saying to me, we've got a real problem with command and control. We couldn't run a war in this country even if we needed to.
Yeah.
And we've got these woeful gaps in our air defense currently.
Well,
where
Ben Wallace is saying today, I've got it here. Ben Wallace is saying today that the UK will face war. The UK is going to go back to war within 7 years, right? So our military funding must go up. So he's predicting that we're going to be at war within 7 years. But at the same time, he's the one that can stop us giving away our money, giving away our assets, disbanding units, disbanding military units, getting rid of warships, putting planes on the back burner. And so,
if you recall, even in this short time that, you know, they've carried on with the reductions.
Still doing it though, isn't he?
No, to call it out. We're at war in Europe with a nuclear power with a full portfolio of conventional weaponry that can wield it. All right. So his 7-year gambit, that could be 7 minutes, 7 days, 7 months. This is not. I'm like, it could be any time, but of course, all the while they're fudging around with not making their mind up and actually doing something, and they're engaging in this European unification process. Remember, the EU has no military capability. The only thing it's offering is to take command and control of everybody else's stuff. They're not adding anything, right?
But
all the while
they're trying, though.
Think of the timing. All the while they're doing that, rather than concentrating on sovereign defence, which is what Dearlove pointed out, was the sovereign defence that's the important part, not the EU. The EU's an irrelevance in this, right? Is that all the while they're doing that, it allows all this time, huge amount of time.
Are they trying to replace NATO with the EU defence?
I think there's a real serious problem here with, like, you know, Anne Widdecombe called this out in 2019, and I had the privilege to work with her on this, with the research and the background sort of briefings and stuff. And her and Farage, you know, called it out, and they openly opposed it. We do not. They were the only ones. They were the only political party other than Sinn Féin that said they didn't want it. So work that one out, everyone, because that is. You know, we've got Labour and Tory silent. So what was the Brexit Party under Farage and Anne Widdecombe? No European Defence Union. We cannot serve two masters. What military we have cannot serve simultaneously the EU and NATO. It's not possible, right? Because it's going to divide what you have, and that's not a solution militarily, as well, you know. So they were the ones to call it out. Now, since that period, then we've had Boris, where he didn't do anything. He just kept quiet. But I think now what we're seeing is this is going to have, they're going to have a real push with this. There's a resurgence now with Healy and Lammy saying, we want to go EU. We've now got all of this traffic and chatter saying our military's broken, we need all this money, and we're going to have to procure all this stuff. Well, the solution, and this is a fantastic phrase that was put to me by a top government defence advisor yesterday, which was, in the absence of any birds singing, a fart will sound like a nightingale. And that's what we're going to get. I believe we're going to get somebody pitch, let's have common European procurement. It'll be brilliant. And of course, the second bit,
anyone watching this and anyone reading what's coming out, I mean, David Lammy giving us advice on military strategic stuff. And you're like, David Lammy? Really? You're the guy that stood in an interview and said you hadn't seen a cop here for hours, and there was one standing right behind you. You know, I wouldn't listen to David Lammy. But the thing is, if you don't listen to him, or you labelled something else, we now have politicians who have no interest in the UK. They do not like the backbone of British patriotism. They don't want the flag up. They're happy to ignore veterans living on the street while bringing in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got a good friend who was he's out in Suffolk. He can't be far from you, actually. Yeah. And there was a couple of veterans. They were in the bus station, and the poor guys just. Properly, you know, they're in trouble, right? And they're camping in the bus station, and the local corporation sends some people down there to move them on. So my mate Nick, 26-year veteran, and he's seen some proper stuff. Falklands vet, you name it, the works. Lovely guy. Goes in there and he's like, whoa, no, you're not doing that. You need to offer these guys a solution before you can't move them on. That's not on. You know, don't do that. And do you know what they did to him? The council wallers called the police. So he's 76 years old, right? Do you know 4 of them jumped him from behind, smashed him to the ground, and handcuffed him and put him in a riot van?
And this is why.
And the only, do you know what, Trevor? The only reason he got let out of the van and not arrested was because one of the coppers was an ex-para, and he finally realised that Nick had been a warrant officer and he was a senior, it's in some senior, action in that respect.
That's where we are, though.
It makes my blood boil. Really boil. But anyway, let's not finish on a sour note. Let's finish on with the dreadful state of the way people are being treated. We're going from big end to little end, aren't we? We're going from the personal end to the national strategic position here. And I think we should close with that. So if anybody wants to have a quick look at what Dearlove has said at this committee, we'll put some stuff up on the Twitter feeds, Trevor, I think, so they can see it in the flesh, because I think it's very important.
I'm going to end by telling you this. I've got the leader of Reform on here on Sunday night. I'll be chatting to him. And I would like to find out. I'm not going to ambush him. That would be a wrong thing to do. It'll put other people off. So start off being nice, asking questions about. I want to see what keeps him focused and moving forward. Yeah. And if his party do get elected, who has he got as his defence advisor? Yeah. And that's a big one, because we don't know. I don't know who his defence advisor is yet. I know who UKIP's is. I know who Lawrence Fox is sort of dealing with, but I'm not going to highlight them. I'm going to wait till I have them all on. But
he needs to. Yeah, I think it would be really helpful for him, and the party to be making some very clear sort of statements on this. I would challenge it. If it was me, I would challenge him. I think Richard, you've been too quiet on this stuff. It's been very much an open. You could have a field day with this stuff, and you seem to be avoiding it. Now, I don't know whether that's because you don't have the knowledge or the experience, but there's no excuse for that, because there's lots of people like you, me, anybody else that want. There's loads of. There's a few of us out there. We're quite happy to help him, brief him, talk to him. And there isn't really an excuse, because it was there with Anne Widdecombe and Nigel Farage. Right? It's there. Just let's get it out and let's start talking about it, because it's no good keeping it quiet, because that's what Labour and Tory have done.
I agree with you. Well, Dave, listen, it's been 37 minutes. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to go and plan other bits and pieces, but I am going to come offline and work things out, what you've said, and plan my conversation for Sunday. I'm going to get things put in place. But thanks for coming on and highlighting what we all probably know a little bit about, but sometimes it's nice to put meat on the bones. But I appreciate you coming on, buddy.
Yeah. Pleasure. Take care.
Have a great day. And thanks everyone for watching. Take care. Bye.